I'm Juana and I'm a defense reporter at Politico. I'm delighted to be joined this morning by CNN's Brianna, Keilar, their senior White House correspondent, and a really great group of women for this conversation about the new network. We're joined by Kathryn Minshew. She is the founder of the Muse, a career development platform, and she was named 2 years in a row to Forbes' list of 30 under 30 in media. Glennis McNichol is next to her, co-founder of The List, a social platform for awesome women, which has grown from a startup to a power list of women over 400 strong. She is also a columnist for Capital New York. And we have with us today two returning Women Rule panelists. Nell Merlino, she's the co-creator of Take Our Daughters to Work Day and the founder and president of Count Me In for Women's Economic Independence, the leading national not-for-profit provider of resources for women to grow their micro businesses into million-dollar enterprises. And last but not least, we're joined by Beverly Bond. She is the founder and executive director of Black Girls Rock, which has mentored and celebrated exceptional women of color who have made outstanding contributions in their careers. Don't forget to tweet questions at us. Our hashtag is Women Rule, and I've got a handy nexus up here, so we'll definitely try to work some of those into this morning's conversation. With that, let's just get started.
All right, we're talking about networking today and how specifically this applies to women. It's something I think that a lot of people are maybe uncomfortable doing, actually, because it forces you sometimes to self-promote beyond your comfort level, maybe forces you to be outgoing if you aren't completely, if that isn't part of your personality. So we wanted to talk, this is something that Juana and I discussed ahead of time, we want to talk about practical applications for this. If we can start with you, Kathryn, just maybe something that an example in your own life or in some sort of advice that you've given someone in a networking situation?
Well, I actually am a big fan of networking because I used to be so opposed to it or afraid of it. And when I started my business, the Muse, all of a sudden my success was dependent on getting in front of investors and potential clients and people that we work with. And so I had to really very quickly start putting myself out there. And one of the things I found that was most effective was coming up with one or two things that I potentially wanted that someone could help me with, and just casually dropping that into almost every conversation I had. So we were talking about this earlier. Casual. It's funny. I got very good at it. At one point, we wanted to get a partnership with Yahoo because we, for various reasons, we wanted this partnership, and I had no way of getting it. And so for an entire month, every time someone asked me, "How's it going? What are you up to recently?" I said, "Oh, things are great. Working on trying to get a partnership with Yahoo. Something else. How are you?" And 97% of people said, "Oh, I'm doing great." And the conversation continued. And 3% said, "Oh, my colleague's sister's husband's postman works at Yahoo. Can I connect you?" And I was like, "Yes, absolutely, you can." And I got 7 offers of connection. 3 people followed up, and one of them actually did the deal with us about maybe 4 weeks later.
Wow. What do you think, Glennis? Is there something that comes to mind for you of a way to kind of like push forward?
I think we were speaking about this earlier. I think the flip side of this is twofold. One, showing up. I think social media can give you sort of a deceptive sense of connection that perhaps does not run as deep or as long as you would need it to be rewarding. So I'm a big believer in just showing up to everything. And the flip side of knowing what you want is having a sense of who you're speaking to and what they can offer, I think, so you're not just blindly walking up to people and saying, "Here's what I have." You walk up with a knowledge of what perhaps they can provide you. People want to be helpful, but you need to make it as easy as possible for them to be helpful. So you want to know who's in the room that you're going to. You don't have to do like a deep Google dive. You're not, like you're on a first date or anything. But I do think it's good to have a sense of the room you're in, the people who are in it, and some sense of what they do and what they consider valuable, so that you can figure out how that meshes with what you're doing a little bit better, and make it easy for people to help you.
What do you think, Nell?
One of the things that I think is most important, particularly in Washington, is being able to very quickly just let people know what it is that you do and how you can be helpful to them. I think the two-way street, I think women particularly are a little challenged by the favor bank that we all have and use and build as our careers grow. And the faster you can sort of let somebody know who you are. We just did it at our table in the Ambassador, and people didn't say their name necessarily. You got to say your name. sort of where you're from and this is what I'm about, so that you can hear that, so that other people, to the almost the opposite of what you were saying, or to the complement of that, how do you quickly get to know each other so you can start to see where you can exchange information, help, contacts, and those kinds of things? We do a 2-minute pitch in the small business world, but in this world, if you have a minute down about I am so-and-so, this is what I do, and I'm looking for a promotion, a new job, whatever it is. But none of the women sitting at my table, by the way, when they said they kind of hoped something changed, only one of them had told somebody at work that they wanted a promotion or a raise. So it's a lot about telling people what it is that you're looking for or that you want, whether it's in your workplace or in a networking situation.
So say it out loud.
Absolutely. And if it is in your head, you're the only one that knows. Whoa!
Get it out there.
Whoa, say it. And say it. I would also say you have to say it. This is truly, I mean, to this point about social media, you have to talk to someone about these things. This is not a email or a tweet or anything. This is a conversation, looking at somebody saying, I'm looking for, or can I help you? It's a different, friendlier, open kind of exchange.
And Beverly, you have a unique situation because you're a former model and a DJ, and you decided you want to create this group, Black Girls Rock. Absolutely. I mean, that's quite a right turn for you. So how did networking come into play, and what did you, I guess, what are some tips that you get from that you can share with others?
Well, I'm actually one of those leaders who, I'm still challenged by networking. I was pushed into the spotlight, especially when I started Black Girls Rock. It wasn't something that I knew that it was a necessity to start this organization to talk about media messages, but I didn't necessarily want to be the spokesperson or I just wanted to do my work and kind of lay back in the cut, you know? And, that did not happen. I was forced to be in the spotlight. So in the process, in mentoring young girls, I make them network amongst each other, and it helps them build their confidence, and it helps me actually build my confidence. At this event, at my table 16, shout out. What we did at our round table was we did introduce ourselves, and it's really about not just wanting something from someone, but letting them know who you are and what you also have to offer and how you can work together. Because a lot of times people want to network, but they don't necessarily know how to make themselves of service to you as well.
Something Beverly said kind of jumped out with me, and so I want to ask a question specifically about gender and networking and start with Nell on this one. In order to be a successful networker, do women need to network like men?
No, because we're not men. We're not men, and we need to be ourselves. You need to be yourself. So I think there's a way of, but that's why I do think you need that short, explanation of who you are, because you want to work with men. And so you want to meet them halfway. You want them to understand who you are and where you are and maybe what you have to offer them in the same way that you want to understand that about them. But do I think you need to do it in the same way? Absolutely not. I think you need to be yourself and do it in a way that is authentically you. But I mean, I'm just thinking about networking with men, and it is much more straightforward in a lot of ways. They sort of say, I'm into this, and they hand you your card and say, if you want to do something, like call me or whatever. And I want to know a little more than that. And so I ask more questions. And I think we can lead them into a conversation where both of you would end up knowing more about each other and whether there's a point in following up or not and all that kind of stuff. So I would say it's incumbent upon us, and I think helpful for us, to really try and engage in a bit of a longer conversation to get some sense of who's doing what and how we could be helpful to each other. So I would say there's some leadership that women could provide in this situation where everybody might get more out of it.
No. I was just going to say, I think when you say network like men, what you're really addressing is, I think what we were speaking a little bit about before, which is women tend to be somewhat shyer about declaring their needs and what they want. And it oftentimes is infused, with a sense of apology. And I think that's really what needs to be addressed, is that you need, it's very difficult for anyone to walk into a room of people they don't know, but you need to rid yourself of the sense that you are asking permission and just say, here's why I'm here, and here is what I want. And I think that's what you mean by networking with men, because men don't apologize. I think that's a big difference.
It actually dovetails perfectly with what I was thinking, is that in some ways I actually think having to network in a lot of very, very aggressively male environments has made me better at it, especially running a technology startup in a field which is often 90% male investors. I think it's something like 80% male entrepreneurs. When I first started out, and even as we started growing in prominence, people would regularly mistake me for the significant other or the girlfriend of someone in the room. And so I found that to have any conversations, I had to get over my fear of self-promoting and say, oh, great to meet you. What do you do? I run a venture-backed technology startup funded by Y Combinator. All of a sudden, they're not writing me off. And it wasn't something that I was comfortable doing at all in the beginning. But because I felt like I had to do it to get heard, I think in some ways it made me better, in general, with a wider variety of networking situations. And I do also find the sort of flip side of that is, I'm sure a lot of you have probably encountered this, sometimes you run into people who are very, very helpful, let's say powerful men in your field, but the only people they think to introduce you to are other women. And that's great on one hand, because you can get introductions to some incredible people, but it also means you may be missing out on a large part of their network. And so I actually heard this, I think it was Cindy Gallup once said, she explicitly asked someone, thank you so much, I'm so excited to meet these people. Do you have any men in your network that I should speak to as well? And he literally stopped and, basically I think in his head went, oh my goodness, you're right, and thought more directly about people of both genders who might be a good business connection.
So is that really, is that, I hear you guys kind of talking about feeling more entitled to just be part of the conversation and changing the mindset. And you sort of say that you're someone who maybe is a little more reserved. How have you done that in just changing your mindset?
It's a process. It's a process of growing into your confidence and, again, being forced to because of your business. There was a time when, I started Black Girls Rock in 2006. I didn't speak on a mic until 2009, and then once we went to TV, I was really forced to actually speak to the world. But I had to grow into that, and it took a while for me to grow into that because I did suffer from that, feeling, I don't want to say that I wasn't worthy, but apologetic.
Or grateful that they've asked you.
Grateful.
Which is a dangerous way to approach it.
And even sometimes now I find myself, I'm always fascinated. Even when you guys called me for this panel, I'm always like, really, they want me? And I have to get through that. You know what I mean? I have to get through that and understand and value what I bring to the world. And it's a process.
Speaking very practically about networking, what has worked for you guys and what hasn't? Is it a Facebook invite? Is it a email? Is it a tweet? Is someone following you on Twitter? Glennis, I know we talked a little bit about your thoughts on social media and how it's impacted networking.
So my co-founder, Rachel Sklar, who was on the panel before me, is very strong on social media, I guess would be a good way to describe her. I am the flip side of that, which is I'm not, my presence on social media is far less just because it's less of a comfort zone for me. But I really think, and it depends, what level you're starting at, but if you're just starting out in any sort of field, showing up and meeting people and shaking hands and putting your face in front of them is the most important thing to me. And when I've met someone and I can associate a face or a conversation or an event with them, I feel so much more likely to respond to the email or the tweet or the Facebook invite. But I think when I look at my own career in media, which really took off in 2007, 2008 with the conventions, and Rachel and I talk about this all the time, attending all of those events was the game changer in all of this. And I know that Twitter wasn't such a player at that point, but really showing up, really shaking a hand, really just saying hello increases exponentially the chance that when I see an email, it's going to trigger a response because I associate it with something sort of more substantial.
I always think of it as well as the first time you meet someone at an event, they're an acquaintance. But if you see that same person at another event, especially if you could recognize each other or if neither of you know as many people, you almost kind of move past that and become friends. And so
an ally.
Exactly. Yeah. You're almost an ally. You can, it's funny. I love going into rooms and seeing, is there someone that I have met maybe once before, and then finding them and saying, I'm really glad to see a familiar face. Even if I know a lot of other people in the room better, it's still really nice to say, I recognize you, I know you, let's, kind of brave this. Networking is uncomfortable for everyone at some level. And so I think, but I think no matter how comfortable someone seems, most people are very happy to make that connection. And the other thing that I always do is I tend to start with the food table, because I find, first of all, I'm always hungry, but also people love food, and I think it often, people have these funny conversations, and you can go up to someone and ask about, whether they've tried the granola or the sushi or whatever it is, I think it lets you have a conversation that's a little bit less forced, especially when you're just new to a room and warming up, and if it's a evening party, it gives you an excuse when the conversation's winding down to be like, so great to meet you, I'm going to run to the bar, because no one can fault you for that.
I guess for more practical information on this, so if you're going into a room full of people or you're making a phone call to try to get a meeting, how do you prioritize who you're calling? How do you state your goals very clearly, I guess? How do you go in with kind of an articulated goal?
I would be as straightforward as possible. And in terms of the phone calls, who are you closest to? Who's the most direct link to what it is that you want? And how many phone calls do you have to make to figure out who that is, or how many emails do you have to do, or how much research do you have to do to understand who knows that person best that you know, so that you can call them and say, I'm so-and-so, and so-and-so is a friend of mine, and they said I should talk to you, and this is what I'm looking for. Because busy people, I'm telling you, the thing that drives me insane are these long stories that I get, and I am sitting there like going, what do you want? What do you want? Seriously, get to the point. I mean, there are scenes in Devil Wears Prada where she's doing this and all those hand signals. I wish I could remember them, because if you're busy, I want to help whoever calls me. Yeah. But if I listened to all the stories, I would have not done half of what I've done. So I think the issue is, I'm so-and-so, here are my credentials, here's who I know, so that you're not talking to a stalker on the phone or whatever. And then, can you help me with this? Yeah. And most of the time you're going to get send me more information, but you've made the contact. And I would say the same is true in person. What is it that you want? And be clear, because the person you're asking, if you think about who it is, the person you're asking usually has got more going on or too much going on. So get into their sort of lexicon of tasks that they're going to perform, and make it easy for them to help you. Make it easy for them to help you. Give them the letter, give them the thing, whatever it is. Most people want to help you, but make it easy for them.
And I think that's the most important thing, because even when I started Black Girls Rock, I reached out to every celebrity, and before we were even on television, we had a strong, healthy group of well-known people that supported this, and it was just because I was clear about the mission, what the problem was, what the mission was, what we wanted them to do, and how we needed their support. And they responded in a way that was favorable to what I wanted, and not because I didn't write them long letters about the issues. I just made it clear, this is a problem, somebody's got to do something about it, and this is how I'm trying to affect change.
So don't have some sort of circuitous...
I think too, for women, when you said
yes, feel stronger
networking
about this.
Like men, women tend to that sense of apology or you can be polite and direct at the same time. Write a subject line that is to the point. When you are on the receiving end of 100, as we all are on the receiving end of so many emails, the subject line doesn't have to be polite, it has to be direct. This is what, just state it right there. And then the email doesn't have to be like, I saw, and so great, and blah, blah, blah. It can just be, hello, here's how I know you, here's how we met, here's what I need. Make it so easy for the person to help you, and don't get too wrapped up in thinking that you are being abrasive or rude or impolite. Because if we think of the emails we often receive from men are often 1 or 2 lines, and it's just a very this is what I need.
I want this.
Exactly.
It's very easy.
It makes it very easy.
Yes or no?
So it's kind of fascinating that, when you look at studies, women don't always articulate their career goals. This is something I can identify with. If someone sort of says, well, what do you want to do next? I'm sort of like, excuse me? Like, are you asking me how much I weigh, right? I mean, sometimes I'm like, that's very private or something. But, what advice do you have in terms of articulating career goals I think it's something a lot of women struggle with.
You got to have them. Seriously, no, you seriously have to have them. We have got to think about this. It is not going to happen to you. You are going to make it happen. So you got to spend some time, because somebody is going to ask you. And hopefully a lot of people are going to ask you. And you got to be able to say, you know, I'm considering such and such, such and such, and so. And, you know, what do you think? Just, it's not like you have to. I was listening I was at table 18, wonderful women there, but they were talking about wanting to figure out how to make the right choice. You got to put it out there, because you'll start to get back enough information to start to understand what the right choice is for you. But it can't all be in your head. Mm-hmm. You've got to, if everybody left here today writing down what they would want in their future, and it could be 3 things, so that anytime anybody asks you that, you've got that. You've got it, so that the conversation can continue, rather than you sitting there thinking, oh, gee, you know, I missed an opportunity, and you may have. So think about it, and literally, like, commit it to yourself that you can answer that question. Because if you could, you will get there. I will tell you, if you can articulate it, you can have it.
We're unfortunately running a little bit short on time, so we're going to leave it there for this morning. Oh, no. Kathryn, Glennis, Nell, Beverly, Brianna, thank you so much for spending time with us this morning. Give these guys a hand. Thank you.